Hello there, world of tankers. Welcome back to another one of my videos. I am Tanks Blitz, and today I'm going to be talking about the SU-130PM. Now, this is a Tier 8 Russian tank destroyer that is currently undergoing super testing, and I'm going to be telling you everything I do know about this tank so far regarding the statistics, the armor profile, how it's going to play when it does get released, and my overall opinion on this tank. Now, of course, because it is in super testing, all the statistics I'm going to be reading off for you guys today could be subject to change, depending on whether the players that are testing it do really well or really bad. Wargaming could balance out the tank. So just remember that the statistics I'm telling you guys could be subject to change. But make sure to stay tuned till the end of this video if you do want to find out everything to know about this tank. Appearance-wise, this is a very funky looking tank. It's almost like you hired the designer of the grill to build a Russian tank destroyer, because it's got that SU looking hull, but then it does have a traversable turret. In fact, it's the only Russian tank destroyer that I'm aware of that does have a traversable turret on it. But it is a very, very cool looking tank. When talking about the statistics of this tank, you can see I have the Scorpion G lined up next to it because it is just such a similar tank at that. And looking at the damage per minute, you can see that the Scorpion G's 2,848 is definitely quite a bit more than the 2,664 the SU does get. But 2,700 is not bad at all. You're still easily going to be shooting into your enemies and hitting pretty much around the same shots you would be hitting in a Scorpion, so it's not the end of the world. Penetration values as well are very, very similar, only 1 millimeter off. But the SU does get one huge advantage over the Scorpion, and that is it shoots heat. And while you may look and say, well, the heat only gets, 7 millimeters more of penetration, it's when you put calibrated on, it really makes a huge difference, because heat gets that way larger penetration buff, and it brings it all the way up to 350 millimeters of penetration, where the Scorpion G is only sitting at 327. With both of those numbers, you're easily going to be able to penetrate pretty much anything you are coming up against. It still is a lot better having 350 over 327. Now, the shell velocity on this tank is a little bit better at the Scorpion G's at 1,030, so that can help you sit a little bit further back and get some nicer shots off. But the Scorpion G does get the APCR rounds, which mean that when shooting the premium on the Scorpion, you do have a better shell velocity. So you can see the ammo on these tanks sort of go back and forth with each other, which is one really cool thing about them. Moving on to the gun handling of this tank, it has an aiming time of 2.08 seconds, which is definitely not bad, especially when you're talking about a Russian tank destroyer. But the Scorpion G is an aiming time of 1.72 seconds, which is 21% better. As well, the dispersion of 0.299 is definitely not bad, but the dispersion on the Scorpion G is still better at 0.29. Really, the only advantage in the gun handling area is the gun depression of 7 degrees over the Scorpion G6. And when you're sitting at the back of the map, really, the gun depression isn't going to make a huge difference. Lastly, but definitely not least, is the mobility of this tank, and it is a beast at that. It can go 65 kilometers per hour forwards, which is 10 faster than the Scorpion. And the reason it is so fast is because it only weighs around 20 tons. And when you combine that with an engine power of 682, it gets just an amazing power to weight ratio of 29.11, which is almost double the Scorpion G's, which is going to pretty much give it the ability to get anywhere very quickly before any other tank is going to be getting into position. So you're going to be able to get shots off right in the beginning of the game. It's also going to give you the ability, if you do get spotted when you're shooting at somebody, to really quickly get out of the way, reposition, and start shooting again. By now you're probably thinking to yourself, well, aside from mobility, the Scorpion G is pretty much better in every single statistic. So what is the point of buying and running this SU-130 if I can pull out a Scorpion G and do better in pretty much every single game as long as I don't get spotted and I know where to go at the back of the map? However, the SU-130 has one really big factor going towards it, and that is the camouflage rating, which is light years ahead of the Scorpion G. The base camo while sitting still is 34%, and while moving is still 20%. And when you compare that to the Scorpion G, it's only 20% and 14%. And as well, the camouflage after shooting is 8% and 5%. And when you compare that again to the Scorpion G, it's 3% and 2%. So the tank is almost twice as good in the camouflage area. And that's one really important thing, because let's say you're on a map like Castilla, and you're up on the ridgeline in your Scorpion G, and there's mediums and lights up on the side of the big hill. Now, if you're shooting at heavy tanks or you're shooting at those mediums in the Scorpion, chances are you're going to get spotted and you're going to get lit up like a fire. If you're in the SU-130, you probably will not get spotted. And the nice thing about the tank is it doesn't have a fully traversable turret, but it still traverses enough where I would definitely suggest that if you put a camouflage net on this tank, it's going to raise that 34% to 44%, which is pretty much going to make it almost impossible to spot this tank until it does shoot. When talking about the armor of this tank, it really doesn't have any. It's, as I said, pretty similar to the Scorpion, but the armor is literally 1 millimeter thick around the gun, so you are never ever going to bounce anything in this tank. But the nice thing that I have noticed about it is that the tracks are pretty big on the vehicle, and because it's such a low silhouette and the gun takes up a pretty large part of the tank as well, it can be very hard to actually hit the high explosive rounds when you're aiming at the vehicle, because the tracks can absorb the shells, the gun can absorb it. It's actually a pretty tricky tank to shoot high explosive at, unlike the giant box the Scorpion G is. But I am a little bit disappointed with Wargaming's decisions on this tank in Blitz, because I do play World of Tanks PC from time to time. I still make sure to keep an eye on all the YouTubers and the tanks that come out in that game, because then I know when one of these tanks that comes out, like the SU-130, which has already been in World of Tanks PC for 2 years now, and I actually have it in my garage, I know how the tanks are, I know how they play, so I have an idea of what they're going to be like when they come into Blitz. In World of Tanks PC, though, the SU-130 does 520 average damage, and the Scorpion G does 490. And I don't know why Blitz couldn't have made the SU-130 do 490 average damage in this game, which would have been the same damage increase, because that would have made the tank just that little bit more interesting to run, and that's really what would have made it a lot more fun for me, and I bet a lot of you guys to pick up this tank. Currently, it's just like a worse copy of the Scorpion G, just with a little bit different mobility and a little bit different camouflage. And I don't find it different enough to where if you already have a Scorpion, you should pick up this tank as well. And the thing that really baffles me is it's almost as if Wargaming acts like the SU-130 has a bigger gun than the Scorpion, because they gave it worse damage per minute, worse aiming time, worse dispersion. And I find that really weird because they do the same damage, and the Scorpion G is pretty much better in every single way because of that. If Wargaming had given it a little bit more alpha and they kept the same damage per minute, it would have made complete sense to me why the gun handling was a little bit worse, why it has a worse damage per minute, because it hits a little bit harder. So you're compensating one thing for another. But in this, you're just losing gun handling for a little bit of mobility and a little bit better camouflage rating. I will say one thing, and that is the tank is still going to be a great vehicle. Even though I'm a little disappointed they didn't give it that little extra alpha damage that it deserves, it's still going to be a great tank. I bet I will love it, and I bet a lot of you guys will still really enjoy running this tank on the battlefield, because who wouldn't like a Scorpion that's a lot faster, it's got a better camouflage rating, it's still going to be a great tank, and I honestly feel that it will dominate quite a bit of positions on the battlefield. And I'm going to turn the end of this video into a little bit of a rant, because I was playing World of Tanks PC, a couple days ago, and while I was doing that I was watching Quickie Baby, which is a very popular World of Tanks YouTuber, and he was making a video on a tank, which was a preview like this one, that hasn't come out yet. But the thing is Wargaming let him actually play the tank in public games, and test it and make his opinion on it, say if it needs a buff, say if it needs a nerf. And the cool thing is Wargaming can say, hey, look, this YouTuber says it needs a buff, it needs a nerf, so we can change it accordingly, see how the public responds. And that's something that's really cool. And as well, the public should get to know about these tanks before they just slap them in the store. When Wargaming throws a tank like the SU-130 in the store in World of Tanks Blitz, nobody knows about the tank really until it comes out, because Blitz just keeps it so secretive. I know contributors that won't let me become, not contributors, but like the leader of my clan will not let me become a tester, because I'm not literally allowed to even record the tanks and post a video of it when it comes out in the store. It's just ridiculous to me how Wargaming wouldn't want people to know about these tanks before they come in, because it's also pretty much advertising for them. If you made a video on a tank before it came out, because now you know about it, and if you like that type of tank, you know, hey, I'm going to pick it up when it comes out instead of having to look for a video that a YouTuber probably rushed because they just wanted to get it out the day that it, came out. So that's just one thing that I really don't understand about wargaming and making videos on tanks that haven't hit the stores yet. But other than that, guys, I really hope you did enjoy this tank preview. And I'm going to do more in the future like this because you guys really seem to like this. So make sure to hit that like button down below if you did. If you don't, hit that downvote button. Let me know as well why you don't like this video or something like that. If you're not subscribed already, please make sure to do so. It really helps the channel grow. It helps me afford to buy new tanks. But other than that, guys, I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.